everyone. Good morning. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to part one of the Self-Fidelity Masterclass. I'm conscious that we are already running a little bit behind, so I'm going to, Jess, thank you. I look very calm. I think I've learned a lot with homeschooling, right? That you just got to roll with this stuff. There's no use fighting it. So look, let me just do a really quick introduction for those of you that weren't able to join us for our first intro session into self-fidelity. We did that, gosh, I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks ago now, which just seems crazy. It doesn't seem it was all that long ago. I think that is definitely a sign of the times. And what we were introduced in that session was really this concept of what is self-fidelity, and Cassie took the hour to really start to help all of us understand this idea of it's really being true to who we are and showing up in a way in which is authentic to that truth and really reconnecting with that. And Cassie, I don't know if you've got plans to give a little bit of an overview, because you and I have been trying to sort out tech here, but I'm conscious that we will have people who obviously weren't in the first session. What the plan is for both this session, and if you haven't registered for part two, please, after this session, I have no doubt that all of you will race to do so. What we're doing is, as part of the amazing work that Cassie has done on this concept of self-fidelity, is that there's 4 elements about how we activate and really bring the practice to life of self-fidelity. And we've essentially, those 4 practices, we're splitting over two masterclasses. So today we'll do 2, and then I think we meet again on the 27th of October. We'll then do the final 2. So Cassie, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to you and take us away, please. Thank you, Mikey. Everyone, please use the chat. Let me know where you're calling in from. Please ask questions as we're going through, Cassie. And Cassie, I'll pause you if I think we need to be answering any of those questions as we're walking through.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alana. So great to be here. Thank goodness technology was our friend today. And part of the challenge of using this particular Culture Amp platform is, as a presenter, once I go into slide share mode, I cannot see anyone at all. And so, Alana, can you please be my eyes and just say something if there's any questions or any sort of technical glitches? If I don't hear Alana you speaking, then I'll just carry on.
Please, like I got you.
Okay. Yeah. Brilliant. So I'm assuming that my slide right now is pretty small. So I'm going to.
No, it's most of the screen.
Oh, it's full screen. Okay, great. Well, I'll just leave it in that mode then, and we'll get started. So, as Alana said, it was wonderful to have the opportunity. It was actually August 11th where I shared a little bit of the practice of self-fidelity with the fabulous Culture First community and a Culture Amp community. And because of the popularity of that conversation, we decided to do another couple of sessions. So today is the first of 2 sessions. As Alana said, we're covering waking up and letting be. And then in the second session, we'll move to the second 2 parts of the framework, which is letting go and letting in. And so really what you'll get today is an understanding of how to change the relationship with the voices in your head. Wouldn't that be nice? And how to more frequently reconnect with the truth of who you are, your most positively powerful ways of being in the world. And of course, you'll get the chance to connect with this community of like-minded pioneers, of which I consider myself part of this community. I've spent many years trying to think about how the heck do you be true to yourself in a world that is constantly trying to convince us that who we are is not enough or in some way inconvenient. And despite spending all these years, I do genuinely consider myself to be a fellow pioneer, and my liberation is really bound up with yours. So I consider myself part of this growing community of self-fidelity pioneers. So welcome and thanks for making the time. So
Cassie, so before you go on, you're not in present mode if you wanted to make your screen even bigger.
Okay. Is that better now?
Perfect. That's awesome.
Brilliant.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Alana. So This is the definition of how I define self-fidelity. It's a practice of being true to our essential nature. And for those of you who are at the August session, there'll be a little bit of similar territory that we cover in the first 10 minutes today, but then we'll very quickly move into fresh content. So don't be disheartened if you feel like, oh, I've heard Cassie talk about this before. We'll quickly move into fresh stuff. But given we've got lots of folks here who weren't in the August workshop, I also want to lay some foundation. So we'll talk more about what is this definition, what are the elements of the definition. But you're basically in the right place today. If you are sick and tired of trying to fix, mold, and prove yourself at work and in life, if you believe that work has a potential to be life enhancing and not soul destroying, if you want to experience greater fulfillment, happiness, and vitality and freedom at work and in your life, if you want to activate more of your potential, because let's face it, most days at work, most of us are just merely skimming the surface of our potential. And if you want, most importantly, perhaps to learn how to trust in the very best version of yourself. And it is my deep belief that as we reconnect to this very best version of ourselves, and as we restore trust in that version of ourselves, our essential nature, that we lift ourselves and each other up. And the most beautiful byproduct of this practice, I think, is as we restore trust in ourselves, we actually restore our trust and faith in each other. And gosh, don't we need that right now? So if all of this resonates, stay here and enjoy the conversation. So this is the essence of what I do. I've spent 20 years in the corporate world. I've had big executive roles for big global companies. And really what I do now is work across multiple organizations in multiple different roles as a coach, a consultant, a facilitator, and as an author, to really empower busy, big-hearted people to create more congruence between who they really are at their core and how they show up at work and in life. So this is one of the lines that inspired this work for me. And I'm sure many of you have come across this line that was written over 4 years ago: "This above all, to thine own self be true." And I think the reason that so many people are aware of this line is because it resonates as truth. For me, absolutely, this idea of being true to myself was so essential to me. But of course, the challenge for me, at least, has always been how. Yeah, thanks, Shakespeare, truth bomb. But how? How do I practically day to day, be true to myself? As I said, when we live in a world that's constantly trying to convince us that we should fit in rather than stand out, that who we really are is maybe somehow inconvenient or inadequate. And so for me, what was always missing was the how. James Clear recently wrote this quote in his weekly newsletter, and he said, "It's a daily battle to be yourself, not merely what the world wants of you." And now I'm a big fan of James Clear, and I don't mean any disrespect in what I'm about to say, but I don't want to battle, James. I am done. Yeah, give me a yeah. So who's sick of the battle? Oh my gosh, like that armor is heavy. You know, the masks hide really who we are. I'm done with the battle. I don't want to be battling on a daily basis with anyone, let alone myself and the world, to try to show up as the most authentic, vibrant version of myself. So what's the alternative? If you feel like me and you're done with the battle, what's the alternative? The alternative is a practice. The alternative is a gentle, lifelong practice that enables us to grow, deepen, and evolve ourselves. And this is a great quote, and I'm a big fan of the work of Carol Sanford. If you've not come across her books, highly recommend them. But this is our task, right? To grow, deepen, and evolve ourselves. And we all need to practice in moment by moment to recall to ourselves the person we want to be, to recall to ourselves the truth of who we really are, beneath all the armor, beneath all the masks, beneath that hardened exterior that the world has kind of conditioned us to create around ourselves. And this is what I offer. This is what the practice of self-fidelity offers all of us, including myself. a gentle practice, a lifelong practice of revealing and restoring, of remembering and reconnecting. And my understanding of this practice continues to evolve. And I wrote my book. It was published late last year. But even since writing this book, I'm getting more and more distilled and more clear. It's quite a thick book. People say it's an easy read, but my next book is going to be much thinner, because the more I learn, the more I'm able to get to the heart of the matter. And that's some of the things I'm going to share with you today. So when we are connected to the truth of who we are, the core, the essence beneath all the armor and the masks, our thinking is spacious and clear. We feel inspired, therefore we are inspiring leaders. Our self-worth is off the table. We have nothing to prove to anyone. Our hearts are open yet discerning. We feel creative and playful, critical elements of our essential nature. Our potential is vast and life is vivid. And of course, the practice of self-fidelity doesn't practice or doesn't promise this type of experience of working life every moment of every day. But my gosh, you're going to have more of these moments if you choose to commit to this practice of self-fidelity. And I've certainly, over the years, the more I practice, the more frequently I experience what it feels like to be connected, to be showing up as the most authentic, vibrant expression of who I am, the unique person that I am, and the unique person each of you are. So to be ourselves in a world that is constantly trying to make us something else is a huge accomplishment. And this takes commitment and it takes practice. And just like you might practice yoga to reconnect to your body, you might practice meditation to reconnect to your inner wisdom and knowing, you can practice self-fidelity within the fabric of your day-to-day life to reconnect to the truth of who you are. Self-fidelity is not a thing that you add on your to-do list. Oh, gosh, no, we've all got too much on our to-do list and not enough time. It's not another thing for your to-do list. It's a different way of approaching everyday moments through this anchoring and this connection to your essence. So I'm going to talk very briefly about why I care about self-fidelity, just because I think it's important that you understand my story, because it gives some meaning and depth to perhaps what I'm going to share with you. I'm then going to talk about why I think everyone really needs to care about self-fidelity, and why this practice of reconnecting to our true nature as humans is perhaps the most urgent and important work we can be doing right now. That's my belief. And then we're going to do a deep dive into the definition, break down the different elements of the definition, and then give you some practical ways that you can start to practice those first two elements of waking up and letting be. So why do I care? Well, this is a photo of me with my dad, and I grew up in the suburbs of Carlingford, in just on the outskirts of Sydney in New South Wales, Australia. And growing up, my dad worked for the government, and Dad suffered from a significant amount of work-related stress. I think the clues that Dad was experiencing stress in this photo is probably a smile that doesn't go to his eyes. For me, Dad looks very tired. And the other clue perhaps is that very full glass of red wine you can see at the bottom right hand of the image. So Dad, like many of us, had his own coping strategies for his work-related stress. But what that meant for me, growing up in a household, with a pressurized household, like many of us perhaps have grown up in that sort of environment where perhaps you're working in eggshells. What that meant for me is a certain moment in my formative years, I kind of lost my way. What happened to me is that my young mind at a certain moment decided that in that sort of environment, that my feelings as a young girl, not only were they not valuable or helpful, in some ways I decided as a young girl my feelings were dangerous. And so what I decided is that if my feelings had no value, I needed to find another currency in which to measure that I had some value in the world, which is, a very when you think about it, a logical, psychological sequence of events. My feelings have no value. I need to feel like I have some value in this world. So what can I measure? Not how I feel and who I am. And at a certain moment, I decided that my value in the world would be measured by my achievements. And this is a common pattern for many high achievers that I work with as a coach. So I decided that I would transform myself into this low maintenance, high achieving machine. And this commitment even extended to my haircut. This is a photo of me as a young girl. And this haircut was no accident. I remember marching down to the local hairdresser saying, chop it all off. I want it short like a boy's, because I decided that brushing my hair in the mornings before school was an inconvenience to my family.
So efficient.
So efficient, so low maintenance, so dedicated, so tragic.
I love it.
And so this persona, this low maintenance, high achieving machine almost, this persona actually served me really well, and it serves many of us well, right? It was a powerful propellant. And what it meant hard. I was able to get really good grades. I got ducks in my school. I managed to get myself a scholarship to university, and I joined the corporate world, and I started climbing the corporate ladder. And from the outside world, it looked like I was living the dream life. I was getting these international assignments. I lived in Europe for 3 years, working for General Electric, driving around Europe in the company car, living the dream life. But actually, inside me, it felt like I was on a roller coaster ride. Felt like I was on a roller coaster ride that was getting faster and faster and faster. The ride was out of control, but I didn't know how to slow it down, let alone how to get off. And now I can see that's a roller coaster ride of low self-worth, because all of my validation in the world, all of my sense of enoughness was tethered to things outside of me, that my projects were on time, on budget, that I got top talent in my performance review, that I got a pay rise, that I won some award at work, that my boss told me that I was doing a good job. When those things were there, I was high as a kite. But when those external measures of my worthiness were not there, everything about me plummeted. And that's the roller coaster ride of low self-worth that I was strapped into for so many years. And then I had a big realization, like many of us have, a pivotal moment. And this pivotal moment happened at a women's leadership retreat. And this was a residential retreat. I was off for a few days with a bunch of high-powered female senior executives. And I'll never forget the moment when one of the women there stood up in front of the group. This woman was running the emergency ward at a hospital. So she was literally saving lives every day. She stood up in front of this group with a group, all of us, in this small room. I can still remember it. I get goosebumps thinking about it. And she had tears streaming down her face. And she confessed to the group that she felt she had no value in the world. And I remember sitting there thinking, holy crap. There was more blasphemy, but I'll keep it PG. Holy crap. If you are saving lives every day and you feel like you have no value in the world, there is no project, no promotion, no corner office, no fancy company car, no designer suit that is going to get me where I so desperately wanted to get to. And I knew I had to find a different way. And that was the moment the seeds of self-fidelity were planted, realizing that I was not alone, that all these women, all these high achievers were propelled with the same shadow of not feeling like who they were at their core was enough. And I realized that I could never achieve my weight and worthiness. I needed to find a completely different way. And I realized now that I was being propelled, and all those achievements, the ducks in my school, the scholarship, the climbing the corporate ladder, I was being propelled with what is the coal-fired equivalent of personal energy sources. This belief, this limiting lie that if I can just do enough, that if I can just have enough, that finally I will be enough. That was my paradigm. And I can see now that whilst that was a powerful propellant, it was toxic, it was polluting, and it was in no way sustainable. And so now I think about the practice of self-fidelity, cultivating this sense of faith in ourselves, this sense of enoughness as the sustainable solar wind power equivalent of personal energy sources. This belief that if I can be my best and therefore do my very best more often, then I'll be truly successful. And when I say truly successful, I mean not defining success by money and power and gold stars and accolades, but defining success in a holistic, sustainable, healthy way. So that's a little bit of background about what I've realized and why, to me, self-fidelity is essential to my ability to perform in a way that's healthy, holistic, and sustainable. But why do I think self-fidelity matters more broadly? Well, we know there's a huge body of research around strengths. That's the first body of research we draw on when we look at, well, what does the data say about what are the benefits of reconnecting to the best version of ourselves, our strengths. And this is just some of the data that exists around the improvements we see in engagement, performance, job satisfaction, and well-being when we're actually connected to and leveraging our strengths. We also can look at the world of psychology, and particularly the phenomenon known as surface acting, which psychologists call as a certain part of emotional labor. So surface acting is when we create incongruity between who we are, how we feel at our core, and how we show up. And this is a quote from Dr. Susan David, who says, when people habitually evoke the stress of surface acting, they'll be more prone to depression, anxiety, decreased job performance, and burnout. And of course, this is one of the reasons that 1 in 4 of us will evade the phenomenon of burnout during our working lives. 3 in 4 employees, according to Gallup research, have experienced some level of burnout, which is just a shocking statistic. And whilst, of course, surface acting and not being true to ourselves and this incongruence between who we really are and how we show up, I'm not saying it's the primal causal factor of burnout, but it's definitely a contributing factor.
Cassie, I just can I pause you there?
Yeah.
Amy's just made look, I think some of the comments so far is just that what you're talking about is really resonating with people. That armor's hard, and it's tough, but we quickly go there, and that it can be scary and uncomfortable, and loving some of the analogies that you're using around how we're being. Amy's just made a really great point here, saying I feel so many people are on this journey in the context of the current environment, being forced to evaluate what is really important in our lives. Which I think is, so powerful. And I also responded saying, I know of a number of people who actually are leaving jobs with nothing to go to, because either they're burnout, they're sick of this constant chasing, that is experienced at the moment. But also I think that we've been forced into this space of seeking greater purpose in what we're doing and how we're using our time.
Absolutely. This is the moment where I think people are starting to question. They're pausing and they're reflecting, because of course it's so easy to be caught up in the hamster wheel, of just hitting repeat day in and day out. And so I think what this the tragedy / opportunity of COVID has been that we've got a moment to pause and to reevaluate. And that we want to create a different way of working, a different way of being at work that previously wasn't available to us. And so I think that is absolutely true. And I do quite a bit of work with people between jobs, because this is one of the moments, normally that one of those few opportunities to pause and reflect and reconnect and reevaluate. But we really all have that opportunity for different ways right now. So yeah, I think that's a really important point. And kind of leads into this great quote that I love, that talks about this time in humanity, this time on planet Earth that we find ourselves living in, and how we can't underestimate the importance of us as a human race, of really as this quote says, connecting into the unique potentials, the particular genius in every one of us, the particular genius in every culture, if we're going to survive our time. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's really why I wrote the book and why I'm so passionate about getting this practice to more people, because it gives us, I believe, the practical tools to really amplify our own particular genius. And the reason why I'm focusing on self-fidelity in the context of our work, at least to begin with, is because workplaces are the arena where we liberate and connect our individual genius to turn into collective genius. It's work, which are the arenas where we're going to solve together some of these super wicked problems that we're leaving for our kids. And so, yeah, now more than ever, I believe that this practice is a vital one, and one that I hope more and more people will join me in conversation about to refine and figure out together. That is my ultimate wish.
Yeah, I love that.
So we're doing well on time. We've got another half an hour, just under half an hour, to talk more deeply about what are the practical ways that you can start to practice self-fidelity. So just to break down the definition a bit further, so to make sure we're all on the same page, let's talk about why it's a practice. So I've already said, just like you might practice yoga to reconnect to your body, you practice self-fidelity to reconnect to your essence, to the truth of who you are. And because this is for me, constant remembering and reconnecting, a constant waking up, and we'll talk about waking up in a minute, it's so easy to kind of go into autopilot in our lives. It's so easy to just kind of be sleepwalking through our days. And that's why it's a practice. Gosh, don't I wish there was some switch we could flick within us, some finish line we could cross where we would never, ever forget again that we are not our voices in our head, that we are not our ways of the conditioned ways of protecting ourselves, that we are something else that lies beneath that. But the reality of it is that there's no button, no switch you can flick, there's no finish line to cross. It is a constant remembering, reconnecting, remembering, waking up, reconnecting. So that's why it's a practice. What does it mean to be true? Well, for me, this is about faithfulness. It's about trust. It's about believing in ourselves. It's about believing in the very best version of ourselves, in our innate goodness, in our innate potential, in our innate power, really. That's to me about the being true, the faithfulness, the trusting part of the idea. And then being true to one's essential nature, because we've got to be really careful, of course, that we don't cultivate trust and faithfulness into the armored part of ourselves, or a part of ourselves that really is not the real us. And so the key to this work is getting very clear on who are you at your core, what is your essential nature, and how do you cultivate trust and connection to those ways of being. And we'll talk more about that. So every day we have choices, right, about who we're becoming. And in each interaction, in each moment, we have a possibility of renewing or destroying our faith in ourselves and each other. And self-fidelity comes into play in those moments when we want to choose to renew and to restore our faith, rather than choose something else, or perhaps rather than choose to go into battle. And I talk about the idea of the bonsai versus the oak tree in much of the work I do. And just to quickly touch on this idea that a single acorn with exact same DNA and potential can live its life as a mighty towering oak tree, or that exact same acorn can live its life as a twisted, stunted bonsai. The only difference is the pot, the root constraint of the bonsai, and the pruning of the branches. And so for me, when we think about self-fidelity in the context of our workplaces, why this concept of the bonsai is something that I encourage all of my clients to keep in the back of their mind, is thinking about, well, what is the size of the pot I've planted myself in here? Does it have enough room for my roots to really grow and expand, to give me the foundations I need to really activate my potential? What is the nature of the soil I'm planted in here? What is the nature of my environment? Are there toxins in the environment, or are there nutrients in the environment? Because we might like to pretend that we are somehow immune to our environment, but it's actually not true. Our environment shapes who we are, and there's only a certain amount of time we can plant ourselves in, let's say, toxic soil before those toxins start to affect us. And then the other thing is, when you think about the branch trimming of a bonsai, who are the gardeners that are near me? Do I surround myself with people who are fertilizing me and giving me space to grow and encouraging me to unfurl? Or are there people with big clippers around me? And unlike an acorn that drops into some random spot and starts growing, we all have agency. We can all decide where we plant ourselves, how long we stay, and what sort of people we let near us in terms of the gardeners in our lives. And of course, for many reasons, many of which can be financial reasons, we have to plant ourselves in small pots. Maybe we need to plant ourselves in toxic soil with people with big clippers around us, and maybe we need to make those decisions. But making those decisions with our eyes wide open of the long-term consequences of staying is what the key here is. And whether it's a 3 or 5 or a 10-year plan to find a bigger pot with better gardeners, what self-fidelity is creates that awareness that enables more choices in the future. So let's talk about waking up, the first element. And waking up is really the threshold, because until we wake up, until we get off autopilot, it's really you'll have limited, I suppose, success in the letting be, letting go, and letting in. So waking up is really the threshold that activates the rest of the loop. Waking up is really about discovering a different perspective. So I came across this little cartoon. I'll let everyone have a read of that. So who can relate to this internal monologue FM? The DJ subconscious.
This is brilliant. Yeah.
Good, right. And I discovered this. Someone sent this to me actually in one of my group coaching programs. Someone sent this to me because in my book I talk about my inner DJ crew, and I said that if my inner DJs had a catch cry, the radio station in my head would be easy listening, hard living.
Yeah, nice.
So, we have this 24/7, or at least in our waking hours, this monologue, these voices in our head. And really, when we're not awake, when we're not aware and awake, when we're on autopilot, when we're sleepwalking through our day, we mistakenly believe that these voices emanate from the real us, that these voices in our head reflect the truth of our essential nature, when actually that's not true. And a lot of what I draw on in my work comes from the work of Richard Swartz, who's pioneered a certain branch of therapy that deals with the different parts of us. And Richard says what we call thinking is actually the inner dialogue with our different parts. And that these parts, none of these parts often reflect our true nature, the truth of who we are. These are the smaller versions of ourselves that we've had to create to survive. And when I think about that younger version of myself with the short hair and the glasses, super conscientious, high achiever, that's a small part of me. But she does not reflect my essential nature. When that part of me is in the driver's seat, she cannot reach the brake. She doesn't even know where the brake is. And she's too young to be driving. She's really driven by this striving, proving energy, which is really not healthy. And so when I can hear that inner dialogue, I know that that's that part of me, but I know that this part of me does not reflect my true essence. So really waking up is about remembering that we have different parts and that none of these parts reflect our true nature. Now, in the Buddhist faith and tradition, this is often discussed in the metaphor of the sky versus the weather. And this quote, "You are the sky, everything else is just the weather," really speaks to this idea that the chatter in our heads, this inner radio station that's easy listening and hard living, that's the weather. That's our different parts having these different tensions or challenges or conversations, but none of these parts really reflect the truth of who we are, which is, in this metaphor, the sky, this enduring, good ways of being that transcend all the voices in our head, that transcend all our parts.
Cassie, before you move on, sorry, Jackie's asked a great question. So she said that young version of you also served an important purpose in your life at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about making her wrong. It's about growing beyond her. Am I understanding right?
Perfect. You've got it. So let me explain more using my babushka doll set, because this is what I do in my retreats, and people say this is actually the best part of my retreat. So yes, so if you think there's a version of you that is your most empowered, activated version of you. This is the version of you that is fully connected to your essence, that knows that it's enough, that feels empowered and activated in life. This is the version of us we want to inhabit more often. Then we have these younger versions of ourselves. So for me, I have this version of me that's red wine color. This is a part of me that says, you can't handle this. This is a very sad part of me. This is a part of me that after a hard day in the office or at work, at about 5:30 will say, just pour yourself a big glass of red wine, take the edge off, Cassie. You can't handle this without wine tonight. That's that part of me. Richard Schwartz would call that the firefighter parts of us. And to that point just made, this numbing part of me has served a very important purpose. And actually, what I didn't say earlier about my roller coaster experience was actually, at that time I was living in a violent relationship. I'd been in a relationship for almost 10 years with frequent escalating domestic violence. And this part of me that kept me quiet and numb, perhaps she even saved my life. So yeah, I'm very grateful for her. And then there's another part of me. This is the small Cassie with the short hair. She believes she's never enough. She needs to prove and strive and be more and do more. And yes, she served a very important role in my life, and I'm very grateful to her. But when she's in the driver's seat, I know that it's not pleasant. I'm being driven by a force beyond my control to prove and strive and do more and more and more and more. And I know I'm grateful to her, but I know that if she's in the driver's seat, I'm on the road to burnout. Then there's another really small part of me. This is what Richard would call our exiled. You might have heard the term inner child. This is the smallest, most vulnerable, afraid part of us. And when I'm hijacked by this part of me, I can't even look my husband in the eye. That's my main tell. I know when she's in the driver's seat, yeah, I can't even look him in the eye. I'm small, I'm withdrawn. I'm really lost all my power when I'm hijacked by my exile, my youngest, most vulnerable part of me. And then with all of that, in the core of that stack, there's my essence, and mine is sparkly green because zest is really my signature strength. So the idea here is to unlock our essence from all those layers. I kind of think of it sometimes as the rings of a tree. I've got all these ages, all these layers, all these layers of armor that have built up, and beneath all of that is my essence. And so the goal here is to get direct, unobstructed access to our essence and to activate our potential through getting that direct connection to our essence. And so in any moment, we can wake up and remember that our thoughts are not instructions on how to behave, and our thoughts often emanate from parts of us that don't reflect our true nature. And so the simplest way to practice waking up is to use the phrase part of me. So, for example, yesterday, something disappointing happened to me at work, and I was able to notice these different emotions. I knew that part of me was really pissed off. Part of me was really angry that I'd been let down. I think that would have been my young achiever part. She was angry. I'd been let down. Someone let me down. I was pissed off. So part of me was angry. Another part of me thought this is just too hard. I should just stop this work altogether. I can't handle this. And then actually I got in touch with another part of me, the most vulnerable part of me, and I actually started crying. I said, part of me just feels like I've been completely let down, and that this person that I thought cared about me actually has just let me down. And I had a short cry, and it was an amazing experience because I had the language to say, part of me feels this, part of me feels that, part of me feels that. But then once I worked through all those parts, I was able to say, but you know what, I know. And it took me maybe 90 minutes of just processing and thinking it. Then I was able to reconnect to my essence to say, no, I can be creative here, I can be compassionate, no one meant to make this mistake. And I can trust that I can figure this out. And I was able to reconnect back into my essence and step back into my power. That's just a practical way of how I use these parts. So if you take anything from this masterclass, rather than saying I'm angry, I'm afraid, I'm pissed off, just insert the word part of me. Part of me feels angry, part of me feels afraid, part of me is really sad. And remember that beneath all those layers of your different parts, there is your essence and this way of being that we're going to talk about next. So that's the practical mechanism for me anyway of waking up. And of course, perhaps some of you are trained in mindfulness or meditation, and there's other techniques. But for me, the simplest way to remember and wake up is to insert the phrase part of me.
Yeah, Cassie, I love that. And Jess has just made a great point. Literally, words right out of our mouth is so powerful and insightful. Helpful to acknowledge that feelings don't define all of you.
They don't, but the language we use, right? Like, say if we have a headache, we'll say I have a headache. We wouldn't say I am a headache, right?
Yes.
But when we have feelings like I am mad, I am resentful, I am upset, we allow these feelings to hijack us. We let these parts of us really take control of the wheel. And as I said, these parts of us are too young to drive. Like that, she shouldn't even have a driver's license as part of me, but she's constantly, when we forget that part of me, we've been hijacked. Well, I'll talk about myself. I know I've been hijacked when I forget that. And sometimes it's not until, 3:00 in the morning, I was like, and I was messaging someone yesterday and said, I'm really frustrated. And 3:00, I'm like, I forgot to say part of me is really frustrated.
Yeah.
So,
well, that gives us all hope, because if you wrote the book and you're still doing it, we're all good, right?
Absolutely. It gets easier, but I wrote the book, and I wrote the book, Alana, so I could have it and remind myself. It sits by my bedside table, so I keep remembering part of me. That's not the real me. So yes, that's the practice part. So that's bring us to the end of this idea of waking up. And part of my portfolio, I work for Thrive Global, that some of you might know is founded and led by Arianna Huffington. And I recently came across this quote from Arianna. I'm like, yes, Arianna, this is what I'm doing in Self-Fidelity, that there's so many signposts that tell us that we need to make more money, climb the ladder. There'll be almost no signposts reminding us to stay connected to the essence of who we are and take care of ourselves along the way. And that's really the job for us to do, as almost an antidote to all these lies about what success is, these narrow definitions of success equals money plus power. We must remind ourselves that that's really not the pathway to true success.
Love that.
So let's cover letting be in the last 10 minutes. So the next part of the practice. So really this is about vibrantly embodying the truth of who we are, our essence, that green sparkly thing that is at the core of all these parts. How do we stay connected to that and draw on its power in moments that matter? So the way I think about this idea of our essential nature is I visualize going into the chemist and having this lovely shelf of all these essential oils with a sign that says the very best of human nature. And we know that all of these virtues, these qualities exist in all of us. All of these qualities on these bottles and many more, we all have them within us. And really letting be is about getting crystal clear on how do the very best virtues of human nature combine and express themselves through us as individuals. So we have the term essential nature, which really encapsulates all these virtues of humanity. And then within that, you have a unique essence. And your unique essence is the unique way that the very best of humankind or human nature expresses itself through you. And because there's only one of you that has ever existed in all time, that expression is as unique as your fingerprint. And so when we think about, well, what is a catalog? Where do I go to for this list of essential oil ingredients that I can choose from? There's different catalogs that we can go to. One that I often refer to is the VIA character strength assessment that comes from the positive psychology world work of Martin Seligman. This is an evidence-based framework that catalogs the best virtues of humankind. And the great thing about the VIA character work is it comes with a free assessment tool. So you can go to their website and do a short assessment and get your top signature strengths and start to get a clue of which of these elements express themselves most vibrantly through you. All of these attributes, all of these virtues are within us. Just some of them are what VIA would call our signature strengths, what I describe as the essential ingredients of our essence. So what is the essence of you? If you really are looking at this list and you think, I have no clue, then ask someone who knows you well. Ask them, who am I being when I'm being most myself? What is my essence? What is my unique way of being that only I can be? And for me, the more I work with my essence, I'm starting to think about it. These are kind of qualities within me that I can't suppress, that if I do suppress them, they make me feel really uneasy, and over time I know they make me sick. And so for me, vitality or zest is really strong in me. So if I'm not moving my body, if I don't get exercise every day, I know I'm not my best self, because vitality for me is a non-negotiable. I've got to feel alive, I've got to feel strong in my body. Another one of my signature strengths is creativity. So I've got to be creating, I've got to be writing. And when I wrote this book, I've got 2 young kids and it took me 3 years to write, and my little boys used to say, Mummy, you love your book more than you love us. And what I wanted to say to my kids, but I could never quite find the words, is that I love you because I'm writing my book. I'm able to love you because I'm doing this creative activity. And if you take this away from me, I can't love you in the way I want to love you because I'm not being myself. That's how we feel about these strengths. We cannot love, we cannot be our best unless we're activating these qualities within us. So if our shared human nature is like water, you might like to think of your essence as a unique, beautiful snowflake. And when we're working from a connection from our essence, the work we do cannot be replicated because we're doing it in a unique way and we feel uplifted and alive. And so we all have this choice, right? How are we going to unfurl? Are we going to shine? Are we going to figure out how to more vibrantly embody this very best version of ourselves? Because if we don't figure that out, it will be lost for all time because only we can do it. And so in the last few minutes, I just wanted to say that I really love this conversation, and hopefully I can check out the chat later in the recording. And if there's more questions, please do reach out to me. I love to co-create with the curious. I've spent many years trying to convince the close-minded, and I've decided I'm done with that. So I show up in these spaces knowing that the curious will gather and we'll have a conversation, although today it's been more me talking, but I do hope to have conversations with some of you in the future to co-create workplaces that can activate the full potential of humanity. This is some of the feedback I've had from people that have worked with me on the practical ways that self-fidelity is making a difference in their lives. And this is the second masterclass coming up next month. If you can't find a link, just message Alana.
I've dropped the link into the chat.
Brilliant. Yeah. So I'd love to continue the conversation or continue the session and cover letting go and letting in. This is me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you if you've got any questions about what I've covered. I know we've covered a lot of ground, but I really wanted to give a lot of value. But please reach out if you've got any questions or comments or would like more. This is my book. It's available on my website. If you use the code FRIEND on my website, I will cover shipping for you if you live in Australia. So if you'd like to read my book, you can check that out. I write a blog every Monday morning. I publish it because, as I said, writing and being creative is key to my essence. So I keep on pumping out these blogs every week. There's lots of blog posts you'll see that talk very directly in more detail to some of the concepts that we've talked about. And there's one there, little Cassie, where I talk about this younger version of myself, and as we said, show her respect and thanks, but also make sure she stays in my pocket. I've created a free self-assessment tool. If you want to do a little assessment to figure out to the extent to which you're being true to yourself right now, I encourage you to give it a go. It takes about 10 minutes. And as I said, it's totally free. So really that brings us to the end. We're right on time. We've got 3 minutes to go. So I might stop sharing so I can see some faces and ask if there's any questions.
It's just me and you. We didn't do faces today.
No worries.
Only just because we just slammed straight into this. So Prue, let's next time make sure that we get you off. We'll get you on screen rather. But lots of thanks, Kathy, in the chat. Curiosity is one of Zoe's key essences. She's saying, Mary's saying, how liberating for you. Jackie loves the metaphors, really helpful and powerful. Jess is another great session. Jess joined us first time. Really loving learning about this idea. Amy's asked a question around, have you got, obviously, besides your own amazing book, any other recommended reading or resources?
Yeah, I've got a whole list of recommended reading, a blog post that I wrote. So if you send me a little note on LinkedIn, I can give you a direct link to that post. I think Richard Swartz, who talks about the framework of parts, has a new book out called No Bad Parts that's just been released. Richard Swartz, No Bad Parts. That's a great book. Any of the books of Carol Sanford that really talk about a new paradigm of doing business, one that really connects to our essential nature as human beings, I highly recommend. And anything by David White, who's the Irish poet and philosopher. David White, some really great books about finding our identity at work. His work has had a profound impact on me and my thinking. So they're the three that come top of mind. But if you do grab a copy of Self-Fidelity, you'll realize it was very painful, but there are literally, let's say 10 pages of references at the back, which almost broke me at the end of 3 years of writing. And so there's plenty of great references you'll find at the back of my book as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cassie. I'm conscious of time. Everyone who has joined today, thank you so much for your patience with us this morning. We promise we will do better next time. We really hope you've enjoyed this conversation. There's lots of love for you, Cassie, in the chat, which you'll get to see later. And we are recording this session. So, but what we will do what we did today and do a bit of a recap at the start of next session as well on October 22nd. Everyone, 27th rather, please stay safe, look after yourselves. Cassie, thank you for your generosity as always, and look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.